Hey everyone, welcome back to Will's Engineering Tips. This is the third part in the SolidWorks tutorial series that I'm doing. In this video I'm going to be showing some other features, some more constraints, and some other sketch tools. I hope you all liked the previous videos. Let me know with your comments, tips, suggestions, anything like that. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it with a quick part introduction. So this piece that we're going to be making here is a perfect candidate for a Revolve tool. It's cylindrical in nature, and it has a consistent cross section all the way around it with some other things cut out of it that'll be pretty simple for us to do. So let's go ahead and get into that by creating a new part. And once that comes up here, we're going to go ahead and create a sketch. So now with the sketch, this will just determine how you want your part to be placed. So if I go ahead and, make my sketch on the right plane and then I revolve it, well, I'll be revolving it around the right, like you can imagine it going, in a circle around this right axis or the top plane axis. If I want to revolve it around the front, then I make it on the front, and then my part would essentially be facing towards the right. And then if I make it on the top, it can be dependent on either the front plane, or I can even make it off to the left and it can go around like it would be on the right plane. For my purposes, I'll show you what this means later, but I'll just go ahead and click on the right plane to start my sketch. And as this shows, what we're going to do is, because this is going to be revolved 360 degrees, I really only need to sketch half of it, because I'm later going to revolve it around the center, and that will come around to this side and then close the loop and make it a perfect circle. So for this, I'm only going to sketch this half section. So let's go ahead and do that. The first thing to do is start where my axis of rotation is going to be. I want it to be right around the center, so I'm just going to go ahead and center line from here out to the side and double click. That's a little thing. If you're in a line tool and you want to place a line, you can just click to place a line, place it somewhere, and then it likes to have you place another one. But if you don't want to do that and you don't want to press the escape key, you can just double click really fast and it'll get you out of it, and you can go ahead and place another line somewhere else. I don't need these lines, so I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of those really fast. But yes, so the length doesn't really matter on this, as long as it's just a line that you're going to revolve around and that it's straight, and I just have it lined up in the center. Then we're going to go ahead and create our sketch. I'm just going to go and start here. We're going to go up, over. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, over, go like this. We're going to go up, then we're going to go over, then we're going to go in. And then a little tip here is, I know that this has a curve at the bottom of this. If I go back here, you can see that there's actually a little radius right here, as mentioned in the dimensions. And so in order to do that, rather than escape out of the line tool, select a circle tool, make it, trim stuff, and then put another line after, SolidWorks is actually integrated in to where if I am outside of like my straight line and I go back onto the point, you'll notice that little circular yellow icon right there looks like a circle, and that allows me to create an arc. So then I'm just going to go ahead and place an arc, and then it goes back to the line tool, and I can continue placing my lines. So then I'm just going to go down till those line up. They didn't really line up, that's fine. We're going to set some constraints later, which is going to fix all of this for us. And there, close the sketch. We can go ahead and escape out of that, and now we can start placing some dimensions. So one of the first things I notice is that I want this to be centered around here. They tell us that in the drawing, but this is up to our discretion. We don't necessarily have to. It just might make it easier for things later. But in order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and right click on this line and do select midpoint. Another way you can do that is, most of the time if you just hover over the line, this little spot will pop up and then you can just click on it. But if you can't, even if it doesn't do it, you can just right click on it, select midpoint, hold the control key, click on the origin, let go of control key, and I'm going to make those vertically aligned. So those will align them vertically up and down. And you can see it shifted this part over, so now it can't move left and right anymore. Now I'm just going to go ahead and set some basic constraints. So since I know that this part is symmetrical left and right, I'm going to go ahead and make these two lines the same. I'm going to make these two lines the same. These two lines the same. These two the same. These two the same. These two the same, and lastly these two the same. And there we go, we've captured some design intent. Now I can set other constraints to line things up for me. So I know that these 2 points need to be vertical with each other. I mean horizontal, and so do these. And so as you'll notice, if I were to say drag one of these up, SolidWorks wants to put them vertical for me, so I can actually just make it so that they stay that way. And I can set these as well, horizontal, make sure these points are horizontally in line, lastly these points horizontally in line, and then make sure this point and this point are horizontally in line. That way if I move this up and down, those stay together. If I move this left and right, those stay together. And if I move this, it moves up and down with it. You can see that there. So now that this is all set, we're ready to go ahead and start placing some of the dimensions that we have here. So the first thing I notice is that it's 1.5 inches wide. So we're just going to go ahead and place that there, 1.5, enter. Set that in, good. Now we know that the overall inside dimension we can get from over here, we see it's 1 inch. So we can do the math based on our diameter, and we know that since we're going to be revolving it, the dimension from the center to where we want it is actually only going to be half of that, so this will be 1/2 inch. Or if we do that just like I did, you can click here, click on the center line, and then go across it, and it'll give us a diametral dimension. And so we'll go ahead and place that at 1 inch. Just saves us from having to do a little bit of calculations. I know sometimes if I'm reading dimensions really fast on drawings or anything, I might just place 1 inch here. But then if you think about that, we're going to end up revolving it, which is going to create another inch down here. So our diameter is really going to be 2 inches once we finish it. So just this little tip really helps out, and it does need to be a center line for this to work. Otherwise SolidWorks can't detect that that's what you're referring to. We also know that this dimension across needs to be 1.5 in diameter. So I can go ahead and select this point, select the line, and then come across it, and then put that as 1.5, and it went ahead and did that for us. Now I know that the angle between this line and if this line were to shoot off into infinity like this, I know that that angle needs to be 60 degrees. So I can actually click on this line at an angle, click on the straight line, and then drag it out this way and make that 60 degrees, and it places that for me. I know that this needs to be 0.375, and all of this I'm just getting from the drawing. That upper radius needs to be 1/8, so we can just go ahead and add that since I saw it, and that's 1/8. There we go. It's also good to make sure that these are tangent. If they're not, you can simply select the merge point, and then you can click on make tangent. I can already see that they're made tangent there, so I don't need to mess with that at all. I can also see that the overall distance, C, is 7.25. So I'm going to go ahead and smart dimension from the top, again to the center line, drag across, and see if I'm on one side it's half, other side is diametral, make that 7.25 total. You'll see it did kind of make it look a little wonky. If you just drag that down, it'll start to fix some of our interesting errors that we had. 1 minute here. Let's get these to go the right way. I do not know why it's like that. If that happens, you can just Control-Z out of it. Sometimes SolidWorks does that where it likes to jump through once you place a dimension. See how these are like really tall, and I'm trying to like make it really short all of a sudden? So one of the ways you can do that is either place other dimensions first before creating this one. So I can actually leave this right here, and I can just change that later. So for example, I know that the distance from the top of this to the bottom of this arc right there is 1/2 inch. And so if you notice, if you click from the top and you just click on the circle, SolidWorks wants to make that a center dimension, a distance to the center. But I know that I want it to be to the edge. So I'm going to go ahead and smart dimension from this line, and I'm going to hold shift, and then I can click on that arc, and then it'll make it a max dimension. I'm going to set that as 0.5. And so now that I know that there, I can go ahead and make some other dimensions. I know that this is 60 degrees in between here. That's already set. And here's another important dialog box. If I try to set something in SolidWorks that SolidWorks has already made known via my constraints and other dimensions, it'll let me know, hey, this is going to make your sketch overdefined. It's already set at this. You're trying to make it something else that it can't be. So I can either make it driven, which will just kind of leave it in there for me to kind of show, or if I go ahead and try to actually place that and I leave it driving, you'll notice that this overcomplicates the drawing and it makes it overdefined. And that's because you're trying to tell SolidWorks to make it something that it actually can't do because it's already mentioned that somewhere else. So we can just go ahead and delete that there. We can also delete these parallel constraints because that we're not exactly sure if that's how we want it, and then that might allow us to change an angle. If not, it's just due to other different constraints. You can see that this is, perpendicular. I can delete that, and now I can place, since those go blue, I can tell that to be 60 degrees. It's just another way that you can do this. It doesn't really have that much of an effect. Let's go ahead and see what happens if we go ahead and change this now to 7 1/4. Does that? There we go. Drag those kind of in. So now we're getting a little bit closer to the shape that we want, but even still we got some room that we need to change here. So we also know that this distance D apart is 1.1 inches, so I can go ahead and make that 1.1. And there we go, widened it up, fattened it out a little bit, and then now we can figure out some other lengths with this. We'll go ahead, so we have that radius set. We know that the distance between these needs to be 1/4 inch, so I can go ahead and select Smart Dimension and set this out. It doesn't like that. So that typically means that there's some other constraints in here that it's not liking. I don't know why it places it. I can clearly change it, but some points it's not liking. Those are equal, those are vertical. Let's try placing it on this side. Let's leave it driving. Oh, there it is. And so actually placing that driving, we can see a dimension, a constraint that I didn't notice, and it wants this to be perpendicular to this line, but I don't want that. And that was something that SolidWorks actually added in for me when I was creating the lines, because you know how sometimes if you click on a line, see all these blue lines that come up? Those want to snap to it. And so sometimes when you snap to things like that, SolidWorks will actually make a constraint for you when it's something you don't want. And so sometimes making a dimension like that, it'll highlight stuff that makes it over-defined, and via doing that I was able to find the constraint that I couldn't see previously. So setting those dimensions there, you can see that we have the half here done. It's all black. We can see down here that we are fully defined. So now we can go ahead and do the revolve. You don't have to go out of the sketch to do this. If you do, you can still get back into it. For the sake of this video, I'll just go ahead and exit out of the sketch. You can see we have the sketch there and a center line that we're going to revolve it around. We'll go ahead and go to Features, and we'll select Revolve. So now we have to select the sketch that we're going to use, or a plane. We can just click on any one of these lines, and SolidWorks is actually smart enough to know the axis that we want to revolve it around, since that's the only axis that we really have. If we were to revolve it around this line, that would just make this inside solid, but we know that we need this little space in here, which is why we left that little gap between it. And you can notice now, if I look at this in an isometric view, you can see the different planes that I have. And so if I show you my front plane's here, and my top plane's there, my right plane is right here. So that's why I make it on the right plane. That way when I revolve it, it revolves around that axis on the right plane, and now I'm looking at a part right here. If I were to make it on a different plane, it would just affect the orientation, which you can always change later. Another nice feature of Revolve is that you can make it blind. You can change the degrees. Say I only wanted to do 180 degrees. It'll just rotate that 180 degrees. You can also flip the direction if I want it on the other side, but I'm just going to flip that back, put it at 360 because I want the full thing. Go ahead and click check, and there you can see our solid piece modeled. Now we know that we need to add in this little keyway here, so let's go ahead and create a sketch. So I will right click on a face, go up here, sketch. Then I can come here, select normal to, which will face me perpendicular to that face, and we'll go ahead and sketch a square. And we know that we want the square touching this line and going over and down approximately about there, doesn't really matter. And then we know that this is coincident with the circle, but this line isn't. So we'll go ahead and select this line, hold Control and select that point, and make those coincident. Now it's touching. Now wherever the square moves, we'll move along with the circle. Now we can go ahead and place our dimensions. We'll go ahead and smart dimension this to 1/4 inch, and the height to 1/8. Go back and check. 1/4, 1/8, that's correct. Now we can go ahead and go Features, Extruded Cut, And for this, we're going to go ahead and select through all because I want it to go through the whole thing all the way to the end, as you see there. We'll go ahead and click check, and now you can see our little keyway was created. Now the last thing left to do is create that little cutout, that goes right down here. And so for that, we're going to go in and we're going to create a sketch on this face. Now this is going to have some interesting arcs, but there's a pretty easy way to do it. And so we're going to do that with some 3-point arcs here. So I'm going to go ahead and select a 3-point arc, and I know that the bottom arc follows the contour of this circle. So I'm just going to click anywhere on it, click anywhere over, and then I can just drag down and I can make that. And since I put these next to each other, say that this wasn't constrained to anything, so say I had it here. Well, it actually doesn't like me doing that. But the way I did it was I put these horizontal with each other. That way it would always be concentric. And as you notice here, this and this I can make concentric. And so now this piece is now fully defined, and the only thing that could change is the position of the black pieces. But I'm going to make those horizontal, and now wherever I move it, they move up together. So from there we can go ahead and create some other sketches on this, the next part of it. So I know that there's going to be a radius here, a straight line, a radius, a curve to another radius, to a straight line, to a curve. So I'm just going to start at this point, click out. You notice it starts a straight line. If I go hover back over the point like I mentioned, it'll create an arc. We're going to create that arc right there, drag a straight line out, do the same thing, create another arc, go from here, go back to it, create a big arc, go back to it, create a little arc, create a straight line, and lastly another little arc. Press escape, and now we'll set some constraints. I can go ahead and select the point here, make that tangent. That's already tangent for me. Select this point here, tangent. Those are all tangent, those are all tangent. So we're good there. The next thing I want to do now is put some center lines from the center of these to the point where those lines start, because I know that those are going to be in line with each other, but you can see that they're not quite lined up. So the way we can do that is just select one of the lines, hold Control and select another line, and we're going to select the constraint collinear. And what that does is it makes those lines collinear with each other. That way they're always in line. This one should automatically be set that way because of the constraints that we set, and these are set perpendicular. I'm just going to go ahead and delete those because I don't necessarily want that. We're going to make these lines now collinear, and we're going to go ahead and make these horizontal with each other. These are going to be horizontal with each other. That's going to center everything. So now when we move this, you can see that they kind of move together with each other a little bit. Let's go ahead and bring this in. And we can actually make the center point of this arc, which is right here, we can put that right on the center there, merge points. And that'll basically merge those 2 points on each other. Now we can go ahead and select a dimension for this, which from the drawing we know, a radius of 2.5. Now we want these all to be the same, so I'll just go ahead and select, Control, select all the others, and make those, equal. Now that those are all equal, we can go ahead and select a dimension for those. Those are going to be, if I remember correctly, yep, 1/4 inch. So now we have the 1/4 inch there. Now we just need to define the angle between these, which if we do that, we find out is 130. And so once we go ahead and put that 130 angle A right there in, we can see that the part went black. It's now fully defined, so we can go ahead and go to Features, Extruded Cut, and we're going to go ahead and select Up to Next. If I were to do Through All, it would do what we need it to do, but it's just going to be cutting a lot of air because it's actually going to be going to the very edge of the part. But I really only need it to go up to this next face, so I'm just going to select Up to Next. Sorry about that. Then if I go ahead and click Check, we can see that it cuts through that up to that next face, perfectly concentric with that outer edge. And now if we look at the part, we can see that it matches our drawing like so with the correct units. Also, we didn't set the material earlier, so we can go ahead and go in here, edit our material, close steel, open up aluminum. We'll set this to 6061 alloy like it mentions. Click apply, click close, and now this is the correct units, the correct material, and the correct dimensions. So, thank you all for watching this video. This was part 3. We basically went over the Revolve tool, a couple more sketch tools, things like that. Feel free to play around with this. Stay tuned for future videos. I plan to go over even more features, sketch things, as well as some of the other tabs I have here, sheet metal, weldment. So if that sounds interesting to you, stay tuned. Let me know if you like these videos. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Let me know if you have any tips, suggestions, feedback. I'm always appreciative of that. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.